it's so exciting because I have created incredible memories from this world. Like I have a photo right behind me of my triathlon. World's worst swimmer here, for the record. Like I came in dead last in the swim portion. I trained an entire summer. Did not matter. The minute I got into the open water, I panicked, even though you weren't supposed to. And I literally came in dead last. But that memory of being able to ride my bicycle past the vehicle assembly building on the Space Center property, the fact that I did not give up, that's something that no one can take that away. I will never be a triathlete. It's not happening for me in the future. It's not something that I gravitate toward, but it's a memory that I created and something that I could say that's an accomplishment, achievement that I absolutely do feel good about.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I like that you are talking about memories because that's kind of where we're going to take this when we talk about pictures as well. So, tell us a little bit more about why having, you just gave a great example of a picture from your triathlon, but what is it about having these pictures from our lives that is so powerful?
It's such a great question. And actually, I just read recently in a publication that states that one of the things that they're starting to see is a trend of folks creating photo albums again, where we now have like thousands of photos in our cell phones, but we're not doing anything with them. And there is quite a bit now where folks are trying to see that they want a tangible physical item of helping them kind of have that nostalgic memory. Realistically, I am a very big believer of being in the moment and not necessarily sitting behind your phone and your lens all the time, but also knowing that being able to look back and have that a little bit of memory stroll might give you that little bit of that dopamine, a little bit of that pickup whenever you need it. I personally have a digital frame in my living room. And in
Me
the
too.
mornings when I'm journaling, I sit down and look at it and it just gives me a little boost of like, oh, 6 years ago, I was in Prague, and I would have never been in Prague if it wouldn't have been because of this, and this, and that chain of events. So there is a lot of that. I think that at the end of the day, we live in such a very beautiful space where we have so much information coming our way and we have so much that's digital. And I love that. I'm not going to take that away from a technology standpoint. Clearly, I have a digital frame, but there's also this beauty of being able to like recapture our days gone by. It helps to give us that boost of confidence, that boost of excitement, and just have a little bit of nostalgia memory. And I think especially important for women, and I'm sure men as well. Again, I work primarily with women, but especially important for women, I believe, as those days with your littles go so quickly.
Yes.
And before you know it, they're out of the house. And that picture may be the best way for you to be able to recapture that feeling of their first bike ride or the first time that you guys were able to go to a theme park or an amusement park or their graduation. And what I really want to drive home is while it may be something that we don't feel great about because maybe we've put on weight or we had a little bit of difficulty with that, is just feeling comfortable to get in front of that camera so that you could say, hey, I was there with my kid. I wasn't like the ghost. There wasn't like Casper the Friendly Ghost taking these photos. It was me. I was there with that child. So I think that's really what's most important, is it's living in that memory as well.
There's a couple things you said that I think are really powerful. And one of them is, and I suppose they're related, but one of them is I do see people kind of experiencing life holding their phone camera all the
Mhm.
time.
Yes.
And I think all the time is too much. And that's
Yes,
what you said.
absolutely.
We want to see where we are and what we're doing and not, watch the concert through the phone the entire
Mhm.
time.
Absolutely.
Good point. And I guess we sort of all figure out our own happy medium there. But that being said, if we're getting ourselves in the picture,
Exactly. You're
then
forming the memory
suddenly,
and the connection. So
yeah,
yeah, you're applying all the senses. So they have, again, I'm not quoting it in the exact study, and I don't know the exact details with it, but I do recall where when you are taking the photos, as beautiful as those photos may be, and you love to look at them, you tend to have almost a not as close of a recollection of forming that memory. So if you allow yourself to get in front
Mm.
of the lens and ask a stranger to come by and take a photo of you in this scenario with your family, if you will, it allows you to, one, actually have a physical token that you were there, but it allows you to connect. It allows you to connect to another person who the person who's actually taking the photograph, but with the people that you're in. I mean, isn't sometimes the most fun part about taking the photo of like jostling people around, like where am I going to stand? Where are you going to stand? Somebody kind of grabbing you close so they can hug you for the photo, all of those different items. So I think that it is very important to get in front of the camera.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I do notice chunks of time as I look back at memories where I wasn't in front of the camera as much. And so if I notice that, then I would try to change it a little bit. And hopefully this is coming in a timely way so that if you're listening and you're noticing, wait, I'm not ever in the picture either,
Mm-hmm.
you can change that. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So from that, I think that we get a lot into our head of, I don't love how I look right now. Like I'm having a bad hair day, so I'm going to skip being in the picture. Or maybe this dress isn't the most uh, flattering for how I feel today. So this is where that movement comes into play, where there's a regular practice of your movement, because even if your body shape doesn't change, you feel better. And that will
Mm.
usually, that confidence relates to the camera. And then you just learn how to actually really capture that joy that you have inside and allow that to be captured in the memory. Now, I'm not going to pretend like there's not some really great ways of looking or feeling your best in front of that camera, of course, with playing with angles, making sure that the lights in a way where it's lighting the contours of your face, but not necessarily blinding you so that you're just squinting through. But generally, just a really good smile and having that confidence behind your eyes will radiate into the photo. And that's really the most important part when you look back at it.
It really resonates with me when you say that because years ago, well, not that many years ago, a few years ago, I had headshots done with a professional photographer
Mhm.
and I was really uncomfortable at first. And she kept saying to me, I need you to be happy. I will see it. I will see it in your eyes. And so eventually I was like comfortable enough, I guess, to feel happier about it. And she was like, "Yes, that, exactly that." Now, when I look back at my pictures, I don't really know how to see that I was happy and it was showing in my eyes. But those pictures did turn out great. So there's something to what you're saying that we're communicating emotionally, maybe with how we're looking.
Oh, absolutely. So you may not have seen it right then and there, but you were exuding it because you felt it. So maybe she made a joke that made you kind of nervously chuckle, but then that chuckle turned into a little bit more of a giggle, or there was a bit more excitement. Maybe this specific person, I know that you're really big into your mood playlist. Music is one of the best ways if anyone is thinking of getting their photos professionally taken. Absolutely. A little
Mhm.
3-minute joyful dancing it out to a really powerful song. Coach Shelby calls it her pump up songs. That's absolutely pivotal to help you in front of the camera. So, asking if you can have a little bit of a playlist if you are getting professional photos taken. I also would say give yourself grace, because for the first 15, 20 minutes, you're going to be uncomfortable. It's just that's realistic. It's going to be awkward. You don't know this individual usually. If you have an opportunity to meet with the photographer beforehand, that's always great. But knowing that still the minute they pick up the camera, you're going to freeze. So that's when you have to start allowing yourself to kind of almost consciously work through it by taking some deep breaths, asking if you can put on a really fun song, and just kind of dancing it out a little bit inside. So I am curious now that you mentioned that. So what are some of your favorite photos?
Oh gosh. That's a great question. I have a digital frame that
Hmm.
has about 700 pictures in it, and I
Ooh,
watch it like a movie because I never know what's coming. But what are some of my favorite pictures? It's really times that remind me of being together with a group of people and being really happy.
right.
And
Having that
that's,
joy.
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
all that the movement does, is it helps you capture your joy so that when you go in front of that camera, it literally comes through. Um, again, if we feel good in our skin, it's going to be captured. If we feel loved and connected with the people we're with in that photo, it's going to be captured. If you feel really awkward and uncomfortable, I mean, let's be honest, we've all had those office corporate settings photos done where everybody's like really stoic and a little uncomfortable and our bodies immediately close up a little bit. They come across that way. It looks like, well, that's a team who
Yep.
didn't want to work together. so, so it's just allowing ourselves to have those opportunities of learning what makes us feel good and how does that translate to capturing that memory in the photo. But I will say that it comes a little bit with practice and it comes a little bit with grace. And I think when I think of the premise of this incredible podcast, that's like at the foundation, right? Is practice and grace. You have to be willing to give yourself grace in front of like whenever you're trying something new, and you have
Yes.
to keep practicing it for it to become something that you actually feel comfortable with. We may not all go on to like grace the covers of Vogue, but we want to be able to at least be able to see our photos in a family album and be able to be like, yeah, we look happy. And that's really
Yeah.
what's important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I heard the phrase at one point, smile with your eyes. And so I try to think of that too. And that's exactly what you're saying is
Yeah.
it shows. Yeah.
Yeah, it's from being inside the other side of the camera quite frequently. I can usually feel the moment that the photo is exactly what the photographer is looking for because I have that feeling. I just feel that confidence. I feel it was emanating in my eyes and my expression. Now, for folks that are listening and aren't seeing this, I don't have a perfectly symmetrical face. I actually have a lazy eye. These are all things that I know that I'm aware of that I have to utilize makeup and the way that I angle my face in front of a camera to be able to kind of, I won't say hide it, but to allow the most flattering possible angles for me. So, because we do have this beautiful digital world now, this is where getting comfortable in front of that camera can be a bit easier. You can get a selfie stick and take practice. Like, what is it tilting my face to the left that looks best, or is it to
Mm.
the right? And just allowing ourselves again to have that practice and have that grace and trying desperately not to be overly critical every single time that we look at a photo. So, this is where I think, again, that for me, and when I work with clients, it's creating that self love through movement and how we are beautiful and how we can move our bodies and how we're able to have this gift. But it could very well be that it has to be more of an affirmation practice with these photos, or maybe it is
Mm.
a learning how to style the clothing for our bodies to make us feel our best. And whatever those practice skills may be, is just continuing to be willing to do it. But ultimately, I know there's probably a couple of moms that are listening to this and they're like, I'm excited if I don't have a shirt on that has like spit up on it. So like that's like I don't know what you're talking about. This girl is like living in a whole different world. So it's also learning like, well, is it just as quickly as maybe pulling your hair down and running your fingers through it with a finger comb and letting that be more natural, or allowing that natural, like if it's, that messy bun life, go ahead and embrace it. But having that joy of playing with your kid and being in that memory is really what's most important.
Yes. So far, I hear you saying that movement is really powerful with how we come
Mhm.
across in pictures, whether it's generally to help us feel good about
Mhm.
ourselves and also maybe right beforehand to get in the mood. And then the emotion, the happiness is important behind how we come across. So let's dig in a little bit more in detail because you've kind of alluded to angles and lighting. Do you have any sort of general tips that people could try related to those things also?
Yes. So this is where almost taking like a little self evaluation. What do you love about yourself? If somebody was to ask you, what do you physically think is beautiful about your body? Because I think for women, the minute they hear a question like that, they panic inside and they think, I really like my personality and I love your personality and that's wonderful. But I want to know physically what do you love the most? Is it your smile? Is it your collarbone? Is it your graceful hands? And try to think a little, not not from a place of criticism, but a place of, hey, yeah, this is awesome. I have like the best legs ever. And you're going to then utilize those things to build in what you want to highlight in your photos. So for me, I do think that my face lights up a little differently when I smile, a really good, genuine smile. So for me, genuinely smiling, again, knowing that I have the lazy eye on my right side. So allowing myself to tilt my head slightly so that it does open up my eye a bit differently. Seeing the light and making sure that my face, again, is very well lit. Posture is going to be super important. So if we are not feeling confident, we're going to slouch over. So this is a time where you're going to, even if you have to fake it till you make it, friends, you're going to want to definitely stand up much taller, elongate that posture, thinking about the fact that kind of almost like a little invisible string from the top of our head so that we have a really good, nice posture. This is not where we're going to practice sucking in our stomachs to the point where we can't breathe. That's not going to be a good photo. So let's go ahead and work on diaphragm breathing, where you are breathing in nice and deep, and then you're engaging your core. You're not necessarily sucking it in. You're just allowing yourself to have a good deep breath. This is where movement beforehand,
Mm.
having a practice of movement is great, but having movement in your photos is phenomenal. In terms of, even with headshots, bring a few props. Sometimes we're like, what do I do with my hands?
Ah, good point.
So bringing in some props, it could be if, you are taking headshots and your business is, let's say you're a podcaster, then asking the photographer if you can bring your microphone. It doesn't need to get plugged in. You don't need to, you don't necessarily need to get into a role playing situation where you're talking like you're interviewing someone, but maybe like adjusting the microphone, seeing how you feel in front of the microphone. Anything that you usually feel confident in is going to help to translate. Again, for all of the women and men that are rolling through here and they're thinking, I want more photos with my kids. Well, not only are they wonderful to have those memories, but also working with being natural with your kid. Are you guys usually really connecting when you go for like an afternoon walk? Then talk to the family photographer about making sure that they capture you guys walking, chatting, talking, even if you're in the process of saying, this is really weird and I don't know why we're doing this. It looks more natural. It looks more relaxed. I think that we have a lot of our ideas, and when we think of getting in front of the photographer, we go 1980s, 90s glamour shot style. And while I'm not throwing any shade to those photos, we want to be a bit more relaxed and a bit more natural because, again, those are the ones that we're going to feel most confident about and most excited about. So I'm a big fan of props to help us working with our hands. I'm a big fan of finding the right timing of day, going out in the middle of the day, and any professional photo for sure. And you're wearing your full garb, maybe you're wearing your business
Mhm.
attire, you're probably going to melt if it's here in Florida. So you're not going to necessarily want to do that. So just finding, what do you feel good in? What do I really like so that I can highlight? So for me, I'm a big journaler. Some of my photos would be just me journaling. I know that sounds awkward and weird, but it's how I feel comfortable. I like being like cozied into my chair and writing and thinking and reading. So for a photographer to capture that, they're going to really get to see who I am, and it looks and translate beautifully to that photo.
I love that. And that probably translates to what you help a lot of your clients with, which is their race photos when they're so happy to be finishing, right? And that's
Yes.
coming through. Yeah.
Yes. So we do spend quite a bit of time with our or the athletes and our clients specifically where, hey, you're working 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months for this goal race. We just had Chicago just wrapped up and a lot of folks were out there. It was a gorgeous day. It was a wonderful, fast and flat kind of race. A lot of folks that were able to get their best times out there. Well, that's beautiful. And you were in it for those full 26 miles. But I guarantee, give yourself 3, 4, 5 years, you're not going to recall quite as much. So you're going to want that photo to come across so that you can absolutely recall going past the Sears Tower or going past the Bean in Millennial Park, or like for New York City, coming off the Verrazano Bridge. These are iconic opportunities that you don't necessarily get every single day. And you want to make sure that you feel good in these photos so that when it comes your way, you're not thinking, well, what was I doing there? So
Right.
this is where we would definitely say the exact same things that I've talked about that translate be it headshots or family photos, be natural, smile. Of course, have that really good posture, breathe through it. Because if you start to tense, if you start to feel uncomfortable, all of those things are going to absolutely translate to where you look miserable in your photos.
Right. And as we're talking, listeners, you can't see me, but I'm kind of thinking, well, how am I sitting and how am I breathing? I'm just like wiggling around in my chair. But that is a good point. And I like the visual of with posture, that kind of the string from the crown of your head pulling you up. Now, what do you say about things that I just hear generally people say about pictures are you should be having your chin out forward. You should have
Mhm.
maybe the angle of the camera coming down towards you as opposed to up. Are those things all
Yeah,
true?
they can. And they can be sometimes there's some gorgeous pictures from a lower angle that photos that people would naturally avoid because they hear that a lot. It depends on where the photographer is positioned or where the camera may be positioned. And maybe depending on what you're doing. Additionally, if you have that camera coming from below, that may be a beautiful opportunity to highlight more of like a lean silhouette where you
Mm.
have your foot slightly forward and it goes up the length of your leg, which makes you look taller or more elongated. Again, that goes back to playing to your great features. If your features are like, hey, I have a great set of gams, that may be a perfect angle for you.
Ooh.
If it's not, then you don't really feel comfortable. I personally have really strong, powerful calves that maybe don't look quite so lean and light in those photos. I probably wouldn't do necessarily that kind of an angle because where the camera's eye is closest is usually what appears the largest. So there is a little bit of
Okay.
that. So that's
Okay.
something to take in consideration. If you're busty and you actually don't particularly love your bust, having that camera at that chest level is going to make you look incredibly busty. So, not something if you prefer to have more of a focus on your face and your smile and your eyes, you are going to want to have that camera up a little bit higher so that it's focusing specifically on where that camera lens is closest to. Now, in terms of some of these, like jutting your chin forward, and then there's even the putting the roof of your or putting your tongue into the roof of your tongue. I'm going to suggest that you guys practice that in front of the camera. Again, practice it in front of your mirror because if you're waiting until the day that you have set up with your photographer to do these things, you're going to feel very awkward. And again, going back to if you feel awkward and unnatural, it's going to translate. So even if it makes sense, it may not feel great and it may take that photographer a bit more time to make you feel comfortable with it. So practicing beforehand. Also, researching your photographer. If people are thinking, I want some family photos, I want some portraits, I want to send, this is the year, I want to send out the Christmas family photos,
Right.
whatever the case may be, interviewing your photographer to make sure you feel comfortable with them. And I think I could speak very frankly that just like we as coaches are more than okay with somebody interviewing us and deciding to go with somebody else because they connect, photographers are the same thing. At the end of the day, you want to make sure you have that connection so that
Mhm.
it does translate over to your to your photos.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. And as I'm thinking about it, you asked me what some of my favorite pictures are. There are two pictures that came to mind as you were talking more. And one, they're both actually from my son's wedding. One is my son and his wife leaving the church and looking at each other, and you can
Yeah.
tell how happy they are. And
Yeah.
then the other one is my daughter in law and my daughter getting ready to pose for a picture together, but just laughing. And it's the happiness thing, isn't it?
Yes, yes. One of my favorite photos ever is my dad and I in my first dance, where he's hard of hearing. And so he usually reads lips. And someone caught a photo of him reading my lips and the connection that we had there of having him, just it could take me instantly back, transport me to how nervous we were to be dancing, of course, in front of everybody, but being able to like comfort each other and him like look, it was just such a beautiful, real how we live our daily life